20,000 people die of cancer every day. This translates to 8 million deaths every year, 500,000 of which are Americans. At the beginning of the last century, 1 person out of 20 would get cancer. In the 1940s, it was 1 out of every 16 people. In the 1970s, 1 person out of 10. Today, 1 person out of 3 gets cancer in the course of their life. Over 1 million Americans are diagnosed with a new cancer every year. All these people suddenly plunge into a dark tunnel that will dramatically change their life for many years to come. Faced with an apparently endless chain of medical tests, examinations, second opinions, medications, new tests, surgical operations, support therapies, and follow-up checks, they find themselves at the complete mercy of the disease. While in that tunnel, each patient feeds an immense medical apparatus that employs hundreds of thousands of people and generates millions and millions of dollars for the medical and pharmaceutical industries. From research laboratories to medical schools, from prevention clinics to worldwide drug sales. Today, the cancer medical apparatus is so large and expensive that it needs its patients in order to survive just as much as the patients need the apparatus.
Cancer is a big business, one of the biggest businesses. The typical cancer patient spends at least $50,000 to treat his or her disease. With 1 million new American cancer patients every year, that translates to $50 billion annually spent on cancer treatment in the United States.
But to modern oncology, cancer still... The official theory maintains that cancer is a problem that originates in the human cell.
Cancer is a group of over 100 diseases characterized by abnormal, uncontrolled cell growth.
Cancer is a sometimes fatal disease caused by the abnormal growth and division of cells. While normal cells have well-defined walls and nuclei, the uncontrolled growth in cancer cells causes the creation of abnormal, unstructured masses of tissue, known as neoplasms or tumors.
Most cancer-related deaths are due to metastasis, malignant cells that penetrate into the circulatory system and establish colonies in other parts of the body.
How and where the migrating cells stop is different for different cancer types. Once the tumor cells are no longer moving, they can begin the process of forming a new tumor by leaving the blood vessel and beginning to reproduce in the new location. If the new environment is suitable, the newly arrived cell will begin to grow and a new tumor will develop.
This official theory, also called molecular theory, is basically the same that was formulated more than 50 years ago.
Cancer begins as a departure from normal cell growth that is harmful and unceasing. If the abnormal cells grow slowly in a limited area, they are called benign tumors. If the cells are spread to other parts of the body, they constitute a malignant tumor, one that is cancerous. Cells of malignant growths break off and travel through the bloodstream to other parts of the body. There, they may start new cancerous growths.
In the last 50 years, the search for the cause of cancer within the human cell has been pushed beyond the limits of anyone's imagination. Today, the most advanced laboratories are working directly on the human genome in order to identify the genes that seem to be responsible, according to some scientists, for the different kinds of cancer. This opens the door to a dreamlike scenario for the pharmaceutical industry. A world where each patient would need its own personal cure, tailored to its own personal needs. 1 million new patients every year, 1 million new cures for each and every one of them.
What we want to do is we want to match the disease with the cure or palliative treatment, whatever it is, by using the genomic tools. And that's really what the whole cancer world is now going to be about for a very long time.
The question of whether we're going to break the cure barrier is not a question about if, it's a question about when.
In the meantime, however, no one has been able to prove that the official theory is the correct one, and that the origin of cancer is in fact of genetic nature.
Major advances are being made in the detection, prevention, and treatment of cancer. But the mechanisms that trigger malignant cell growth are still not completely understood.
In the meantime, statistics seem only to get worse.
We've lost the war on cancer. Since the 1950s, the outlook for most cancer patients has remained the same, a 1 in 3 chance of living for 5 years after diagnosis using conventional therapies, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, drugs. The fact is that today, 2 out of 3 American cancer patients will be dead before 5 years.
Despite such dismal results, official oncology continues to impose on patients the only 3 therapies that have ever been authorized in the last 100 years: surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. And 2 of the 3 are actually carcinogenic.
Surgery is the oldest technique and the most successful of the 3. But surgery is useful only when the cancer is localized, a minority of cases. Patients also fear radiation's dangerous side effects. One of these is that radiation can actually cause cancer. The use of radiation remains controversial even in medical circles.
As much as we could work with her, say on a math problem, she was not comprehending it.
It would take a long time to get like a worksheet done.
Parts of Elizabeth's brain weren't there anymore because of the radiation, that it had killed that part of the brain. So the part of the brain that was responsible for memory was gone.
Chemotherapy is designed to kill cancer cells throughout the body. It is highly toxic, however, and it also kills healthy cells. Today, chemotherapy is often given in combination with surgery and radiation.
Your typical chemotherapy agent will certainly cause tiredness. There is a risk of sickness, but there are very good anti-sickness drugs these days that can control that. Chemotherapy frequently causes taste change. It can cause a sore mouth. The first side effect that many people ask about, however, is hair loss.
In fact, many chemotherapy drugs are carcinogenic. Their toxicity is so high that all personnel handling them must observe very strict safety rules. Their disposal calls for total destruction and incineration of anything that comes in contact with them. Some of these drugs remain partially toxic even after incineration beyond 1800 degrees Fahrenheit.
In the 90s, most of that research got pulled out of universities and was brought to for-profit research organizations. The problem is that gave virtual complete control over the research to the drug companies. They could design the studies. They have control of the data so that many of the authors of the most important articles published in our best journals aren't even allowed to see their own data. They don't get free access to their own data. And they have control over publication.
To sum it all up, the pharmaceutical industry first gained control of the teaching system. Then it gave the AMA the power to exclude all other doctors from practicing. Then it took over the entire drug testing process, while heavily influencing the medical publications that reviewed those drugs. And finally, Big Pharma extended its control over the federal entity that is supposed to verify those drugs' safety and efficacy. At the opposite end are the sick citizens, and in the middle are the doctors who must cure them based on information they can only get from the pharmaceutical industry, which can no longer be verified. Chemotherapy drugs are in fact among the most expensive of all. A 1-month supply of erlotinib, a chemotherapy drug produced by Roche, costs $2,300. The same supply of sorafenib, Bayer's chemotherapy drug, costs $5,500. The monthly supply of sunitinib, a chemotherapy drug produced by Pfizer, cost almost $7,000.
The drug industry is the most successful global industry in the world. What they don't want you to do is get better. Because if you get better, their market's gone.